What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about one of the newest Blumhouse movies that I was actually looking forward to checking out for one particular reason, and that is because this movie stars Christopher Abbott, and I'm a huge fan of Christopher Abbott. I've been a big fan of his work for years now. I typically watch any and every project that he's involved in. I actually went to New York last year and saw him off Broadway in Danny and the Deep Blue Sea, which was just a phenomenal show, just absolutely incredible. Had an amazing time seeing him perform live with Aubrey Plaza. Just a really amazing experience overall. And I was really looking forward to seeing him in this movie because he's done horror and horror adjacent projects before, but I just wanted to see how he would do in this particular role. And I was also looking forward to watching this because it's directed by Leigh Whannell, who's had a big part of the Insidious franchise. He's made a couple of movies I've really enjoyed and some that I haven't enjoyed as much, but he seems to be a really cool person. So I was looking forward to checking this out for that very reason. And the movie I'm going to be telling you about today is Wolfman. Wolfman is directed by Leigh Whannell. With his marriage fraying, Blake persuades his wife Charlotte to take a break from the city and visit his remote childhood home in rural Oregon. As they arrive at the farmhouse in the dead of night, they're attacked by an unseen animal and barricade themselves inside a home as the creature prowls the perimeter. But as the night stretches on, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable. So I was really excited to watch this movie. As I said, I'm a huge Christopher Abbott fan, and this movie was really bad, unfortunately. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen by any means, but it just feels like a ton of wasted potential. There's a lot of really cool ideas here, but I feel like the execution is really sloppy, and I also feel like that they rush to get this movie made because it just meanders a whole lot. There are a ton of scenes that really go nowhere. It feels like you could have chopped 25 minutes off this runtime and it would have been the exact same movie. And I'm going to break that down for you when I talk about the movie as a whole today. So our main character in this film is Blake, played by Christopher Abbott. In the early parts of the film, we get to see him as a young boy with his father living in this farmhouse in Oregon, and they have a very tense relationship. They're not close whatsoever. His dad is always incredibly on edge, and we get these series of events that happen between the two of them, and we jump 30 years into the future where he is living in the city with his wife Charlotte, played by Julia Garner, and their daughter. And there's some tension in their relationship. He stays at home with his daughter. He's in between jobs, and he loves his daughter with his whole heart, you can tell, but he is also incredibly overprotective. And Charlotte is just completely and totally consumed by work, and he gets a letter in the mail that is informing him that his father has passed away and that he can come to his house to gather his belongings. And so he eventually convinces his wife to go during the summer, take some time off work to collect the items from his father's home in the middle of nowhere in Oregon. So they travel out there together, and as they are driving, an animal goes into the middle of the road and they crash their U-Haul in the middle of the woods, and they end up escaping and managing to run to Blake's father's old house, where they are surrounded by whatever this creature is. And the creature, in the process of them getting there, scrapes Blake across the arm and he starts to transform into something different. And the entirety of the film is this family trapped inside this secluded house trying to fight for their survival. So like I said, not a huge fan of this movie at all. I felt like it was pretty bad with a lot of wasted potential. But I'll talk about some of the positives. I really like Christopher Abbott, and he does the best that he possibly can in this role. I feel like his character is really hollow, so there's not a whole lot to build on, but there's some really great moments when it comes to his transformation that I feel like his bodily performance, he does a really great job. As far as the way this film is shot, they do a really nice job building atmosphere. There are some moments in the cinematography that I feel like it's a little bit too dark, where your just eyes are kind of wandering looking for things, and I feel like they could have done a better job with that. But for the most part, they do a great job utilizing the cinematography, isolating this family and putting you in their situation, which I think helps with some of the more suspenseful moments in the movie. But that's about all I've got. I have a lot of negatives outside of that. For starters, I hated the creature design for the Wolfman in this. It feels much more man and a lot less wolf. I feel like just the design for it really sloppy and poorly put together. It feels like it's partially transformed, like I wasn't getting wolf. If anything, I was getting more dog, which was incredibly disappointing. And there's been a ton of iterations of the Wolfman over the years, so there's not really like a specific standard by any means. But I just wasn't horrified by it. It was almost kind of laughable at times. Like I was looking at this design and just like, okay, there's nothing about this that's scary or intimidating or off-putting, which made it a little bit difficult to watch. The second issue I have with this movie is it has no idea what it wants to be. At the beginning of the movie, it's trying to be a family drama, establishing the relationship between Blake and his father early on, then issues in his marriage, but his love for his daughter. And you'd think that the family stuff would translate in the third act into something that would really be an emotional gut punch, but it doesn't. There's a couple of moments that they try to kind of circle back to some of the themes that they're exploring early on in the film, but then it's all just kind of thrown to the wayside and becomes just a regular fight for survival movie, which was relatively disappointing because horror is a genre that does a great job when it's allegorical, when it's trying to teach a message or say something. And that's not to say that a horror movie can't just be straightforward gore, action, violence. But the problem is this movie set you up to think that it was that and then becomes something completely and totally different. The other issue I have with this movie is there's very little tension or suspense. And if there's one word I would use to describe a bulk of the runtime of this movie, it's awkward. There are some moments in this, like they're trying to showcase Christopher Abbott's character going through this transformation, and there's like a scene where he's like putting up this bookcase up against a door, and like his daughter comes in the room and he talks to her and she just kind of stands there and turns around, and then his wife comes there and he says something to her and she just kind of turns around and walks away. And it's like later on they explain that like his communication is dampered to where he can't understand them and they can't understand him, but there's no sort of like allusion to that, so the scene comes across as very uncomfortable and just weirdly out of place. And there's a couple of moments like that throughout the middle portion of the film. And I also feel like the family's reaction to being chased down by this creature, especially early on, like they're all just kind of fine with it in a lot of moments. Like the reaction isn't very extreme. Like you'd think that you wouldn't have a lot of moments that you're just sitting there in the quiet. And I don't know, that was just weird to me. Like I feel like you would constantly be on edge and that the suspense would be there. And then another problem I have with this movie, and I talk about this a lot, movies don't always need musical manipulation. I don't think that's a complete and total necessity, especially when you have really great visuals or things accompanying the movie to build your tension in other ways. But this movie, they didn't really utilize music at all. And so there's a lot of moments just devoid of sound that I think that Leigh Whannell was hopeful that you as an audience member would get tension in the specific situation, but it's just non-existent. Honestly, there were so many moments I just found myself being complete and totally bored. Like I was not worried for the family. I was not in suspense as what was going to happen next. And I think a lot of that was just due to the poor pacing of the film overall. Like I said early on, this film's like an hour and 40 minutes long, and it feels very long. It feels like it really overstays its welcome, and that it doesn't really do the greatest job hitting home anything in particular. The end is the biggest just kind of like okay I've seen in a movie in quite some time. And I also thought that they really didn't do enough with the body horror transformation of Wolfman, because throughout history in any sort of iteration of Wolfman, it's a very grisly and disgusting thing for a human to transform into this creature. And there's a couple of moments that they try to showcase it, but I honestly feel like it could have been more gory, or they could have like held on shots longer for the audience to really feel the totality of the transformation. And so all of that just led to a very mediocre experience. I was just relatively bored through the runtime of the movie. I feel like it's not really doing anything all that special. And if you skip this one, you're not missing out on anything. So have you seen Wolfman? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I was incredibly disappointed by this movie. And honestly, I just feel like it was a ton of wasted potential. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material, and I look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.